So outside, you're looking at partial pressure in terms of millimeters mercury, 159 outside the body, 104 in the lungs. By the time you transport oxygen to your cells and tissues, notice it dropped as low as 40. So we're looking at constantly consuming this oxygen and using it to make ATP. You might recall how diffusion works. How does diffusion transport molecules?
High to low concentration.
High to low concentration. This is the same aspect. It's not high to low concentration, it's high to low pressure. So 159 is higher pressure than 40 inside our body. So the natural flow for oxygen is to come into our body. Take a look at carbon dioxide. Where is the highest concentration? In your body or outside your body? I heard a couple of answers there. Inside. Take a look at the numbers. 45 is higher in your cells. 0.3 is what is in the air around your body. So actually the highest concentration of CO2 is in our own body. We are a waste generator of CO2. So we actually exhale off this gas, which is a waste product for us. So our bodies are constantly trying to get rid of this excess CO2. So our cells and tissues actually have the highest concentration of carbon dioxide. It drops slightly in the lungs, but when we exhale it out, it becomes part of that mixture of air that we're breathing. So it becomes a mixture with other oxygen, nitrogen, and water vapor gases. So what do you think the natural tendency for carbon dioxide is? To come in or to go out of our bodies? Go out. So we are built to bring in oxygen, moving it to areas of lowest pressure, and we're also built to remove CO2, getting it out of our bodies to areas of lowest pressure. This is just like diffusion, but instead of moving from high to low concentration, this time we're moving from high to low pressure. So oxygen moves in, carbon dioxide moves out. I have a little animation for you. I know that sometimes these flash animations don't work real well, so it is posted on the bottom of the detail announcement. But just in case you have trouble watching it, I want to display it for you. And what this does is it talks about changes in partial pressure, oxygen, and carbon dioxide. Get your volume turned up. It's not working. Let's see what.
Fresh air entering the lung carries oxygen with a PO2 of 160. The presence of moisture in the lung results in reduction of the PO2 to 104. Fresh air entering the lung carries carbon dioxide with a PCO2 of 0.3. The carbon dioxide delivered to the lung from the blood raises the PCO2 to 40. At the arterial ends of the pulmonary capillaries, oxygen diffuses from the air in the alveoli into the blood, and carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood into the alveoli because of differences in partial pressures. As a result of diffusion at the venous ends of the pulmonary capillaries, the PO2 in the blood is equal to the PO2 in the alveoli, and the PCO2 in the blood is equal to the PCO2 in the alveoli. With no differences in partial pressure, there is no more net movement of oxygen or carbon dioxide. Oxygen diffuses out of the arterial ends of tissue capillaries into the tissue fluid, then into the cells, and carbon dioxide diffuses out of the cells into the tissue fluid, then into the blood because of differences in partial pressures. At the venous ends of tissue capillaries, the PO2 in the blood is equal to the PO2 in the tissue fluid, and the PCO2 in the blood is equal to the PCO2 in the tissue fluid, resulting in no more net movement of oxygen or carbon dioxide. The blood now carries the oxygen and carbon dioxide to the lungs. In the body, all of these exchanges occur simultaneously.
Okay, what you're watching right now, see how the blood gases are being transported around the body? When we talked in here on Tuesday, we said there were 4 main events to respiration: pulmonary ventilation, external respiration, internal respiration, and respiratory gas transport. What's going on right now?
Gas transport.
Gas transport, good. Notice back up there, the lungs, they were doing the carbon dioxide exchange. Is that external or internal respiration?
External.
External, yeah, because you're exchanging gases with the outside world at your lungs. Down here at these body cells and tissues, that must be internal respiration. So that's kind of where we're heading right now, is understanding how the gases actually get transported through these internal and external respiration processes. How about questions so far? Let's talk about oxygen transport, then over on the top of page 81.
Need 83?
I need glasses. I don't 83 is right.
And that movement occurs in with the changes outside of the cell, mostly, right?
You're talking about like moving oxygen.
And then carbon dioxide exchange of the two occurs more outside
Yeah,
the cell.
more outside the cell. Because once it's exchanged with the capillary and the interstitial fluid, then it's just going to migrate into or out of the cell, depending on what gas it is. Yeah. Tracy.
The bottom 82.
Sure.
You don't have to worry about that.
I wouldn't worry about nitrogen gas because it's not a big player here. All right, this is a little trip back for us to the blood chapter. You might recall that when we talked about red blood cells, we also talked about a very complex molecule known as hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is one of those molecules that's a quaternary protein. That means it has a rather complex structure. I put a star here beside hemoglobin because that is the most common way for oxygen to be transported. Oxygen binds to that hemoglobin and then is traveling through the blood bound to the hemoglobin. Some of our blood, or some of our oxygen rather, is actually dissolved in our blood plasma. Blood plasma is largely what? Liquid, yeah, it's water. So actually the oxygen becomes dissolved in the water of our blood plasma and is transported in that manner. So you can see here that by far the big majority of oxygen is transported bound to hemoglobin around your body in the bloodstream. Alright, so on your worksheet, let's talk about association of oxygen and hemoglobin. This is a way of review for us. If we are loading oxygen into the bloodstream, where are we?
The bloodstream.
If you're loading oxygen into the bloodstream from the air, yeah, take the air, that oxygen, move it into the bloodstream, the capillaries specifically in those lungs. So what we're doing right now is we're going to figure out how we can get that oxygen bound to hemoglobin. Let's go back to chapter, 17 for a moment. In chapter 17, we talked about these heme groups and the iron molecules that are bound to those heme groups. You'll notice in one single hemoglobin, there is one heme with an iron, there's a second one, 3, and 4. So we've got 4 iron molecules bound to 4 heme groups here, and guess what? We can bind 4 oxygen molecules. So 4 is the magic number here for a hemoglobin molecule. 4 irons can bind to 4 oxygen molecules.
And that's fully loaded?
That is fully loaded, exactly.
Okay.
I kind of think of hemoglobin like a car because it takes 4 total riders, and those 4 riders are going to be oxygen molecules. I want to talk to you about a word here called affinity, and that's about halfway down page 83. If you have an affinity for something, you like it, right? Oxygen and hemoglobin have affinities for each other as well. This specifically refers to how well hemoglobin binds to oxygen. Here's the interesting thing. If one oxygen molecule binds to the iron on the hemoglobin, it makes the likelihood of having another oxygen bind increase. So increases the affinity for more oxygen to rise. If two oxygens are bound to these two iron molecules, it then of course increases the affinity yet again, making it easier for a third one to go for a ride. And if you've got three oxygen molecules bound to the iron, it makes it even easier for the fourth oxygen molecule to go for a ride. So all you need is one oxygen molecule to bind to the hemoglobin to actually make it easier for more oxygen molecules to hitch a ride. So fully loaded means oxygens are bound to every iron molecule here, and we've got full saturation. That means every heme group and every iron here is carrying an oxygen molecule. Notice what it means to be partially saturated. If you've only got one, we say that you're 25% saturated. Where did they get 25% from?
A quarter.
It's a quarter. If you can carry 4, 1 is a quarter, exactly. If you can carry 2 oxygen molecules, 50% loaded. 3, 75%, and 4, of course, is fully saturated. It's 100% loaded.
But wouldn't it always want to be fully saturated?
Maybe or maybe not. Actually, not all the oxygen is dumped off. Actually, most of the oxygen stays bound and goes for a ride, just in case you need a quick demand for it.
Okay.
So it just depends. Okay, so you'll notice here, let's get you a picture. You have to be quick with this one. Notice it shifts, and they call it oxyhemoglobin when oxygen is bound to the hemoglobin. And notice it shifts again, and they call it deoxyhemoglobin when oxygen does what?
Detaches.
Detaches, when it unbinds. Hey, if oxygen is unbinding from hemoglobin, where is it going?
The tissues.
To the tissues. Yeah, so it's probably getting off the hemoglobin ride and then diffusing into your body cells and tissues. It's heading for which organelle?
Mitochondria.
Mitochondria. So you can see that if it, unbinds from the hemoglobin molecule, it forms deoxyhemoglobin. Oxygen bound to hemoglobin is oxyhemoglobin. Do you recall the color differences for these two?
Dark red and light red.
Dark red and bright red, yeah. Oxyhemoglobin is a bright red color, kind of like this shirt there. And now everybody's going to look at you, of course. Dark red, of course, is deoxyhemoglobin. That means we're missing oxygen from those hemoglobin molecules. Okay, that takes us into something called the oxygen.